Welcome back, Flare community. I hope you're all well and having an incredible day as always. And today we're actually going to be listening in to a live stream. This is going to be talking about the Messari crypto report, in addition to I'm guessing some Firelight stuff. But before we jump into that, in case you missed it today, the Flare network actually stopped producing blocks. This is major news for the network, and the brief outage probably lasted somewhere close to about 6 hours. That was this morning for me at 9 a.m. or actually it was much earlier than that. And the resolution has actually been made and committed and fixed, and all of the validators have now rectified the issue by updating their nodes. And there is also a post-mortem result from the Flare team here. I'm probably going to dive into this in a separate video because today we are focusing on this here. XRPFi is taking off at full speed. Join an X space with Flare, SentoraHQ, who are building Firelight, and MessariCrypto to deep dive the movement and everything that has been happening at Flare to lead to it. This is happening in just under 8 minutes now, and it's going to be very interesting to listen into. We've got Victor of the Flare team, we've got Jeremy from Messari, and Gabriel here from Sentora. Now, you may be wondering what this report is all about. Well, it's actually quite an extensive report, and I might actually make a full video breaking this down if you would be interested. But it's very insightful. It's got a lot of information, some nice little diagrams here that you can see talking about the F asset creation workflow. We got the core vault here and F asset dashboard, which you should all be familiar with on a Songbird. Of course, this is going to be the exact same interface for when it goes live on the Flare network. We got the liquidity event, which was the introduction of USDT 0 when it launched, and we saw that explosion of TVL on the Flare network. Again, talking more about stable coins, but this document is very nice. You've got the STXRP architecture, STXRP being staked XRP from Firelight. And yeah, what we're going to do, I guess as a precursor here, is run through this quick thread done by Jeremy at its flow. He's created this thread talking about or summarizing this article. We're going to just read through this before we jump into the live space. So, Flare Networks is unlocking DeFi for one of crypto's biggest assets. Here's what you need to know about XRPFi. F assets, like FXRP, give XRP smart contract functionality on the Flare network, backed by collateral and real-time cross-chain verification. Flare's native infrastructure, which is the Flare Time Series Oracle, the FTSO, and the FDC, which is the Flare Data Connector, secures these systems without relying on external oracles or bridges. The launch of USDT 0 via Tether and Layer 0 tripled Flare's total value locked in under 2 weeks. And as you can see, that is quite some growth for such a short period of time. What is the current status of FXRP and the FS asset ecosystem? Well, FXRP is live on Songbird. Some of you may have been testing this, and Songbird obviously being Flare's canary network, and it's allowing for testing of real economic conditions. It's a network that holds real value. This is what it looks like if you have participated. You can choose to mint F assets. Of course, Doge was supported, but this version is now only supporting XRP, and XRP will be the only asset available on the Flare network once it goes live. So talking about the liquidity changed, how liquidity changed the game. USDT Zero, Tether on Flare via Layer Zero launched, and the TVL jumped 220% in just 13 days, showing really strong demand for such a powerful stablecoin. And one of the biggest things about this stablecoin is the fact that it allows direct deposits and withdrawals from certain exchanges. And the current supporter of the Flare network's USDT Zero is Kraken. So very convenient if you are a user of Kraken and you don't have to jump through bridging over to another asset or another network like Ethereum, for example. It now powers USDT Zero now powers most of Flare's DeFi activity, with incentives as high as 100% actually at the minute, but most of them are just 30%, 20% for, maybe providing USDT Zero to lend out. Again, you can talk about all of this here. It is really a good report, and again, I think I might actually do a specific video on this because it does bring a lot of detail, not just about what's happening, what's coming, but also you see the precursors here, a primer. I'm extremely excited for F assets, and especially this whole Firelight situation, because I think there's going to be a lot of incentives in the form of RFLR for people that do interact with XRP and bridging essentially, or using F assets to bring FXRP onto the Flare network. If I would say something, I would say that if you not want to participate and get the maximum yields, there's probably going to be 3 different assets that you're going to need. You're probably going to need XRP, so you can bridge it to FXRP. You're probably going to need USDT Zero and FLR. I reckon there'll be combinations of liquidity provision for all of these, which will be highly incentivized. We've seen Flare incentivize USDT Zero quite a lot, and I imagine it's going to be the exact same with people bridging XRP, and we should see some attractive yields too. Right, where are we? What time is it? We've got 2 minutes to go before this space starts. Let's just sit here for a short moment, and we'll see what happens. How's everyone doing in the chat? Vibes of blockchain. Hola. Flare probably just stress tested and did a quick update before FXRP launching on Flare. I wish it was that, but the postmortem does say something different here. We got 2 minutes left. Let's quickly run through this, the summary. Earlier today, Flare mainnet experienced a brief outage, causing a temporary halt in block production, about 6 hours. The issue was identified as a known and since patched bug in the validator sampling mechanism inherited from an upstream dependency. So this is actually from the Avalanche Go package that Flare utilizes. And what this actually means is here, the issue was identified as a known since patched bug in the validator sampling. So deciding which validators are sampled. A pre-planned audit network upgrade containing the fix was deployed ahead of schedule, successfully restoring network functionality by earlier today. Root cause: the outage was triggered by a bug in the GoFlare version 1.10 client software, originating from an upstream Avalanche dependency. So dependency means a piece of software that is not under your control that you depend on, right? The bug was located in the validator sampling algorithm, which is critical for block production and peer selection. Under specific network conditions, the cumulative weight of all validators surpassed the maximum value of the 64-bit integer. This resulted in an out-of-range error, causing validator nodes to shut down. The loss of these validators interrupted the network's ability to produce new blocks. Now, let's just see. We are on time now. It is on the hour, which means that the space should be starting. All you need to know that there was a problem. The network did halt, and there is a resolution that has been put in place. A new update to the software. The validators have since upgraded their nodes, and everything now is back on track. Right, let's jump in here. Let's give this a bit of a refresh. When we go here, check out the spaces. There we go. We're going to start listening in and see if anyone's actually started speaking yet. Okay, it is still very early here, so I imagine they're just trying to organize the space, getting people up. We've got Sentora that needs to come up. We've also got Victor here, aka Quantic, and Firelight too. Let's just hang back for a second, and we'll see what happens. Zifnab, glad it was not the result from some kind of attack on the Flare network. Yeah, that would certainly be a worry, but it is what it is. You know, I think in the grand scheme of things, 6 hours, it wasn't that much downtime. And the thing that really impressed me actually was the speed of how the validators actually jumped to the rescue and updated their nodes extremely fast. 6 hours is pretty impressive if you ask me, to considering that the validator set is very diverse from many parts of the world in all types of regions and continents. So it's pretty impressive stuff here. All right, I'm going to blow this up a little bit, make it a bit bigger for you guys. And there we go. We've got Quantic up there, aka Victor. See what happens here. Really has been a bit of a crazy day. Definitely keeping us on our feet.
Good morning. I'm doing a little bit of a mic check. Can I get some reactions to see if people can hear me properly?
There we go. We give Victor his reactions. Okay, so it looks like he's doing some admin. He's going to have to invite some other people up to the space.
Okay, I see some reactions. Awesome. You guys took a little bit in React, huh? I hope that you are not in shock. Today is, let's say, an interesting and long day for the Flare ecosystem,
No
but I'm
kidding.
super happy about the response that we have seen from our developers, from our ecosystem in general, our partners, and our community as well. So today we're going to have a very interesting space on the topic of XRPFi. We had an interesting release from Messari's deep dive on Flare, and we're going to have a nice conversation to try to understand deeper about what is behind this growth and what's coming up next, right? So let me see if I can find our dear guests today here among the people in the audience. I see. Let me check real quick here. I need, who do I need here? I need to make sure that I bring on stage the right people, right? So today we are going to be having two guests, one from Sentora and another one from Messari. Of course, Messari is one of our main areas of focus, but we have Jeremy Koch from Messari here. Oh, I see you now. It's Flow. I'm so sorry. It's just that figuring it out like the right handle is always a little bit of a pain for me. And we have another guest from Sentora, right? We have Gabriel. Gabriel, let me find your handle here. I think I have it. So I think I'm now in a position to get started because we do have both of our speakers on stage. At least this is what I can see on my end. So maybe let's do another mic check. How are you doing, Jeremy? Can you hear me? All good on your end?
Yeah, doing well. Can you guys hear me loud and clear?
Right, guys, before they do the introductions, I will say that I'm going to sign out. I will be in the chat, and they're just doing the mic check now. And I'm going to reduce my volume on my mic, and we're going to listen in.
You guys can hear me.
Awesome. Yes, I'm doing all of this double checking today. Very important. Things can go wrong with the spaces, and some days are more difficult than others. But I'm super excited about this space because honestly, there is so much I personally need to learn about this topic. Of course, I work for Flare. Uh, every day I'm learning new things, but when it comes to the latest development on DeFi, on XRP, on risk taking, and what to expect about the future. I think that I can learn so much from you. So first of all, thank you so much for joining. Maybe I think we're right on time to get started, right? So for the people in our audience, welcome everyone. Please make sure to retweet this space so we can reach as many people as possible. And let's get started, maybe with an introduction by each one of you. And Jeremy, do you want to take the lead?
For sure, yeah. So thanks so much for having me today. Happy to be here to share a little bit about the report and just some of my general thoughts. So I'm Jeremy, research analyst over at Messari. Been in the crypto space for around 5 years. Worked over at Fidelity Digital Assets for a bit before hopping over to Messari. So that's a little bit about my background. Gabriel, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. The name's Gabriel. I've been working for 3 years now at Sentora, which was previously called Into the Block. I'm a senior researcher here, been doing a bit of everything, but main focus on risk in the space, especially with DeFi strategies, but then also building other things for Sentora as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for the nice introduction. I would 100% encourage the people in our audience to follow this gentleman if you want to learn more about everything related to DeFi, right? So let's get started maybe to warm up with a question about Ripple and XRP. So this year, it has been, to say the least, an interesting year for Ripple. A lot of hype and many anticipating a sort of surge in the entire XRP ledger ecosystem, and also the institutional interest, right? So my first question for both of you is, what are your thoughts on XRP's future, especially considering, the research that you have done from the different angles, right? Specifically for Messari and from Sentora as well.
Yeah, for sure. I can take the first stab at this one. So I think I look at a lot of projects all the time, every day. And a little fun fact is that like XRP was actually the first crypto I ever bought back in 2019. Bought a whole $10 worth of it back then. But that small purchase did get me curious. And once I kind of had skin in the game, started diving into just researching into the ecosystem. And honestly, it's a big part of kind of where I am today. So when it comes to XRP and Ripple, I kind of look at it in two different ways. First being financially, and then the other from more of like a utility standpoint. And one of the main reasons why I decided to kind of dedicate my career right now to crypto was the guiding belief that it could really reshape the world. And I do still believe that, even though we've seen a lot of scams and not great stuff throughout the last couple years here in the space. But XRP and Ripple have always really leaned into the institutional use cases, infrastructure building, and now many years later, we're starting to see kind of the fruits of that labor, and we're starting to see some of that stuff come live. So I've always really believed that lasting projects in the space do take a little bit longer to deliver, which is okay. It means they're building good product there. But I feel like we're reaching that moment where all that hard work is going to pay off. Like even just looking broadly at the space, the Genius Act for stablecoins was huge. Circle IPO is doing really well. Coinbase just hit all-time highs. Same with Robinhood. This shows that there's real demand for crypto-based projects and that we're kind of reaching that chasm and hopefully crossing it. So I think the future is pretty bright for projects focused on utility and interoperability, which XRP and Flare kind of hit those right on the head. So yeah, that's kind of my answer to that.
Yeah, on my side, I would say like I come with a heavy focus on the EVM world, so Ethereum and all of the L2s and some of the other L1s like Flare. And one thing that I have seen is there has been a large increase in interoperability, as Jeremy said, where in the last year or last 2 years, let's say, there's been a lot of talk about fragmentation of liquidity through these different L2s, et cetera. But we're seeing a lot of the infra fall into place now, either via intents or other dynamics where the lines between the different chains is starting to blur, and being able to access capital from one chain to another is going to become something that people don't even think about anymore. And this in particular is likely going to unlock a lot of these non-EVM based assets. So obviously XRP and even some other ones, maybe XLM or Cardano, where they're going to be able to access where programmers and devs are and where smart contracts are robust enough to build out an ecosystem that can really unlock the full potential of the liquidity that's built up in these different coins. And then I think doubling down on what Jeremy had said, as simple as it is, XRP has always been the institutional crypto asset, and the institutions are coming. So I think if you want to have the very simple narrative, that's where you can find it right there.
It is an exciting time for sure for utility, right? Considering the description of the problem, like you both share, right? Essentially, we do have all of this liquidity on these other chains that are not EVM compatible, and with interoperability, we can start utilizing that in very interesting ways. And institutions being onboarded, participating on this is really, really something I would say unique that we haven't seen before. Jeremy, let's move forward with the report, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the report shows like Flare's TVL tripling to about 120 millions just 13 days after the USDT zero went live, right? You guys at Messari, I can imagine that you have a bunch of data sets and whatnot, right? So my question is, which on-chain indicators suggest that this liquidity is actually sticky rather than purely incentive driven?
Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes it's hard to tell. Like a lot of on-chain metrics are pretty gameable. So it is possible, like when you're looking at a lot of different chains, you have to take stuff with a grain of salt for sure. But for Flare specifically, I'm definitely watching the TVL growth closely. And the stickiness to me kind of comes down to how the capital is being deployed and what is it actually doing in the ecosystem. So I think incentives definitely drive a lot of the activity, which is not a bad thing if it's done properly. And for stablecoins, like for metrics specifically, it's good to look at kind of like the velocity of them. So how much is being moved around and used, the number of unique paying addresses, growth of outstanding supplies, and making sure that the TVL is basically increasing, not decreasing. And then it's also good to look at uh, the amount of stablecoins in different protocols on Flare. So it's good to kind of have Tether or whatever other stablecoins are on the chain in different protocols and not just all centralized into one main kind of application on chain.
Yeah, that's a great point. And by the way, if you want to add something, some of the questions are actually for Jeremy, but if you want to jump ahead and add something, please feel free to do so. On my side, I think that it is one of the most interesting things to look at, like not only where the liquidity is flowing, but how exactly this capital is being utilized, right? So maybe let's move forward and talk about institutional players, right? So we have, for instance, Vivo Power with $100 million of XRP. showing like growing confidence in XRP DeFi's potential on Flare in particular. And so my question would be, why do you think more listed companies are exploring on-chain treasuries strategies, right? And how much of a positive signal for the broader crypto industry this is?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at this and looking forward to hearing Gabriel's thoughts on like this from a risk aspect as well. So I think what we're kind of seeing is the start of kind of DeFi as a treasury management layer for institutions. So companies like Vivo Power and Uphold have kind of expressed interest specifically in XRP and Flare and like being able to use the assets rather than just having them sit idle. And this trend kind of started with Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy for Bitcoin and kind of like what's being coined as like Bitcoin Fi. And now a lot of other companies are following suit a little bit down the risk curve or market cap size. And I think it's an interesting way to gain exposure to these assets, but it's not totally proven out yet. For the companies that are doing this, it makes a lot of sense because they're being able to kind of borrow off their stock and then buy the assets. But it also does kind of build up leverage in the system, which, as we've seen time and time again, sometimes does come crashing down. So you do kind of need to be aware of that. So I don't think it's totally proven yet. But I think we will see a lot more companies following suit and kind of adding crypto assets to their balance sheets. Whether or not they come to buy XRP is a different question. And that will most likely kind of depend on the knowledge of these companies and the yield offered. So like a leading indicator for this could be if Bitcoin Pi starts to gain like real on-chain usage, and then that could incentivize others to be like, hey, there's actually other assets that have just as good a yield and just as robust ecosystems, if not more. Let's explore how to utilize that as well.
Yeah. I would say the TradFi world and where some of this is coming from is maybe outside my main roundhouse, but I think you have two types of institutions buying. So these ones that are making the play like strategy is on buying Bitcoin and essentially selling stock options to continue funding this with the idea that these assets are going to go to the moon, and this will have a terrific payout in the end. And going down the list, smaller companies are going down the list, picking off some of the assets that are in the top 20, let's say. I think there's also, now that there is a lot more clarity in US regulation, and I think even more, there's pretty established rules and regulations in some other countries on purchasing crypto. It's an easy way for a large company to have some pretty nice upward hedge exposure, where buying 100 million from their books maybe is not a huge portion of their reserves and the capital that they hold, but there is a quite a large potential for this to move quite high. And of course, like these companies can also, with these larger tokens, they can hedge the downside risks of these as well. And now that we're starting to see the DeFi rails solidify and become much more robust in handling large amounts of asset volume coming on from these institutions, they're all starting to dip their toes in DeFi, because if you are able to hold this with some upwards price exposure, and you can maybe hedge some sort of way any sort of downwards price exposure, what better way to make that capital become more active than deploying it in DeFi and potentially earning yields on these assets in the meantime while you're waiting for the asset price to potentially go up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the boom that we're seeing with the stable coins will kind of enhance all of this system and how people, like how external people and institutions see DeFi, right? And how they can operate with less risk maybe and less volatility. But anyway, moving forward and thinking about XRP. So historically, you can think, okay, this is kind of a dormant DeFi utility asset, right? And now we know that staking is coming. So the question would be, what sort of catalyst beyond the staking incentives do you expect will sustain what we call XRPFi adoption, not only during this year, but within, let's say, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, this is like a fun thought experiment in my mind. So it's like, what makes long-term traction? What makes a good successful project? And I think one project to kind of look at as kind of a roadmap or a guide could be like Hyperliquid. They had a large airdrop, so the community was super involved. They have a great product which kind of sells itself, and they also do token buybacks. So I do think incentives are kind of important, and they will be used. But some other kind of themes I look at for like more durable catalysts for XRP-Fi, first kind of being composability. So like once like FXRP and other F assets and like STXRP become more widely accepted as like collateral in like different types of money markets, DEXs, or even real world asset protocols like RWA stuff, that can create kind of like reflexive demand, which is important. And then another one would be like interoperability. So obviously F assets are going to expand outside of just XRP. And if I'm not mistaken, too, this can be up to community proposals of like what assets to add, which kind of hits on, if we look at Hyperliquid as a roadmap, kind of a great product and community involvement that hits that pretty well. And then also, like as cross-chain users begins to grow, it's going to be pretty important to make sure there's enough liquidity and integrations to be able to kind of accept that. And where I kind of see this potentially playing out is the ability for on-chain agents to access F assets from other ecosystems. And these agents most likely will be programmed to be after the best yield and security. And Flare really could emerge as like a good option to put value in. And I think DUSD kind of helps unlock this as well. So like when you're looking kind of at the agentic economy, where finance is going in the future, that is a big theme that we don't want to miss out on. And then another kind of catalyst, institutional credibility. So kind of as mentioned before, like if Uphold or Vivo Power do actively participate in F assets, they're bringing a lot of capital, a lot of liquidity, and it also signals to other players that the rails are safe. And in tandem to that, I also am looking forward to kind of see the growth of who becomes agents for Flare and who will be operating them. It's like if we eventually see like solid TradFi companies or large players becoming agents, that would be a huge signal that the system's really working and it has appetite and demand for it. So like if we see like, I guess starting off, it would be more kind of on-chain, kind of forward-looking institutions. Like maybe you'd see like Coinbase, Kraken, Franklin Templeton, or Fidelity, or other kind of good actors in the space. If they decide to like spin up an agent, that'd be a huge signal in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Flare network has a pretty good advantage with how its Oracle and data connectors are built out for being able to host very interesting AI agents that can operate with on and off chain data. I think that, as Jeremy said, this could easily be a catalyst. One thing that, at least for XRP and some of these other non-yield bearing assets that could potentially be onboarded through the F assets portal as well, that is a huge catalyst that maybe gets overlooked, is just the low cost of capital. So these different tokens that don't have any sort of native yield staking component like Ethereum means that there's no real way to generate yield natively for the assets, which in the end actually gives the assets a bit of an advantage, because earning, let's say 1, 2, 3% on something like XRP could actually be very appealing for a huge majority of the XRP holders. And this means that for staking specifically and using XRP as a economic security for different activities such as AI agents or insurance or whatever, they're going to be the assets that people seek out because the cost of capital is lower for them. Now, this might start to converge with other things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but at least in the next years, just this aspect, I think, will be a huge driver for people to adopt XRP because one, there's a huge market cap for XRP. So that means there's a lot of liquidity that can be used for these types of features. And second is that when you're looking at some sort of economic security, it's not necessarily the token that you're most concerned about, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP. In the end, like the value, the US dollar value is really what you're wanting to harness in this sort of design space. And so being able to have XRP or Bitcoin securing the items that you're looking to build on top of the chain, like AI agents or insurance, as I said, it's just a matter of like the volatility of the asset, and these higher market cap assets are usually less volatile compared to some market cap of 100 or 200 million. And so this will be a huge driver for building out XRPFi in the future. And plus all of these people that are wanting to utilize their XRP for things that have been happening in the DeFi ecosystem on Ethereum for years now, like taking loans to maybe buy something off chain, or using their XRP and borrowing stable coins to deploy into some other higher yield bearing strategies. These are all things that haven't been done with XRP before. And so there will be a huge demand for it from XRP holders that have just been waiting for this moment.
Yeah, it's been an interesting period of time, and seeing the development of this as part of Flare has been really, really interesting for me, and to learn more about DeFi systems and the so many possibilities, right? But anyway, next I want to talk a little bit more about the sort of tech and security. So this question is actually for Jeremy. The report credits Flare's dual Oracle design, meaning the FTSO plus the FTC Flare data connector, key differentiators, right? So in plain terms, from your perspective, where does this actually reduce failure points compared with external Oracle networks?
Yeah, okay, I'll give this a shot. So kind of in simple terms, Flare builds Oracle functionality into the base layer. So instead of having to rely kind of on third-party networks like Chainlink or Pyth, the FTSO provides the decentralized price feeds natively, which is a super big advantage. And then the FTC kind of enables verifiable cross-chain data, such as like checking if XRP was actually sent on the ledger, or other actions like I think Hugo years ago once said like it could be used to kind of guarantee or authenticate in like the end result of like a sporting event and other stuff like that. So this kind of dual system removes two common points of failure: off-chain dependencies and bridge-specific assumptions. So for the first one, Flare doesn't need to wait on the external oracles to report the state changes, which is really important, helps kind of the speed and throughput there. And then for the bridge-specific assumptions, you're not really relying on a single relayer, multi-sig, or governance committee to attest to cross-chain events. So in my view, these both kind of reduce latency and trust assumptions there, which are often where bridges and oracles have failed historically. So kind of we'll see like once Flare gets more at scale how this works, but I think it should be pretty good network design here.
100%. And thinking about F assets and the current design of the system. So when it comes to F assets collateral structure, you could maybe say that it appears more conservative than other types of wrapper assets protocol. So the question here would be, how do you view collateral when evaluating different projects? And where does F asset kind of land on this broader spectrum?
Yeah, for sure. So in the crypto space, as we kind of all know, as we operate here, there's risks associated with everything. So it's always kind of good to think about this when you're evaluating a project or looking to deploy any type of money there. So F assets takes kind of a distinctly multi-layered approach to risk, something that we highlight in the report. So FXRP is actually backed by 1x of the native asset. So for XRP, around 1.5 times in the Flare collateral pool from the agents, and then also around 1.2 times stable coins. That's over 2x total collateralization, which is really, really good in my opinion. So from my understanding, also the one of the places to look at from the risk assumption side is on the agent side to make sure is who are running the agents, making sure they're good actors. So you'd want to go kind of embed those agents as well as part of your risk profile there. And honestly, like as a on a recent episode of Forward Guidance, like yesterday or 2 days ago, they were talking to Maple Finance's co-founder, and he mentioned that when they were doing under collateralized loans, so you putting up less collateral than you're getting back in like 21, 22, they were actually able to avoid lending out to like 3AC and FTX as they didn't pass like a quick kind of due diligence balance sheet check. And that likely saved Maple Finance from dying. So risk is very, very important to look at and evaluate here. So I think FSS collateral structure is pretty good so far.
Anything to add here, Gabriel, in regards to maybe some of the research that you guys have done independently?
I think Jeremy covered it quite well. Yeah, I don't think I have much to add there. Pretty eloquent.
Fair enough. Let's move on then to F-Assets B1.1, which, as you probably know already, and also for the people in our audience, maintains the system's over collateralization while introducing this new concept of the core vault, which essentially is a multi-sig escrow that has another feature with an alert mode, right? So then the question would be, from your perspective, where exactly does this cut risk versus what one would expect from a standard token breach? And then a second part to this question is, how much really of extra capital efficiency can this unlock before what we would call a safety buffer starts to shrink?
Yeah, I'll give this one a shot. So the core vault kind of as you just mentioned is a smart upgrade because it adds like a programmability layer of security to how the underlying assets like XRP are managed, similar to like a DeFi native custodian in a way. So using a multi-sig escrow accounts, daily withdrawal limits, and then also the ability to trigger an alert mode, Flare kind of introduced a lot of granular circuit breakers that a lot of token bridges simply just don't have really. And this really matters because a lot of bridge exploits happen super fast and they have no internal throttles. So this kind of core vault structure allows to slow things down and can almost localize like the blast radius and in the event of a hack or a bad actor, which hopefully won't happen. So kind of from my understanding in terms of capital efficiency, the core vault should allow agents to unlock collateral and redeploy it, which could increase minting capacity and system throughput without actually lowering the overall collateral ratio. So this means you get better capital usage without compromising systematic safety. So at least until like the usage maxes out or vault liquidity or collateral thresholds are reached. So the real test will be how that buffer holds up under like market stress, which we won't know till it happens. But from a design standpoint, it seems pretty solid.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, the system looks solid, but obviously this kind of thing, you need to test it out in real conditions, right? And well, we do have Songbird to do this kind of testing, and we saw one of the things that I can say is that the demand of for XRP and FXRP is really high, right? So maybe let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next, in the sense that, okay, we're going to start with FXRP. We're all excited about it. It will unlock yield, and there will be a bunch of other interesting things that you will be able to do with your FXRP. But at some point, we do expect to have other assets such as FBTC or FDoge as the next F assets, right? So purely from a research perspective, which of these assets do you think can offer the sort of clearest product market fit, and why?
Yeah, I'll hit first and hand it over. So my feelings would definitely be FBTC, as like Bitcoin Fi is becoming a thing as well. So in theory, also like FBTC might be able to actually launch a lot quicker and faster than a lot of the actual BTC Fi projects linked to like Bitcoin's main chain there. So that's one potentially pretty big catalyst. And then also FXRP kind of will show us a successful POC to Bitcoin holders. So then you might be able to unlock a little bit more dormant capital there because they'll be willing to try it out as it's already kind of proven. And then my thoughts on F Doge, I think it would be cool. I'm not exactly too familiar with the holder distribution of the Doge community at this time, so I can't really speak if they would be excited about this. Obviously, you are unlocking value and yield for them, but I'm not sure if the Doge community is as strong as it once was. Could be totally wrong there, but I haven't seen it blown up on my timeline in a while.
Same here,
Yeah,
Gabriel.
yeah. I mean, a lot of the meme coins, they're a bit tricky. You know, it's a lot of vibe based stuff, and the meme coins have taken a big hit with, in general, just with pumped up fun fatigue, I guess. But from my perspective, I mean, obviously FBTC is the whale in the room that everybody wants to have uh, attract the capital to their chain. But kind of hitting back on the point of low cost of capital, especially when it comes to staking in something like Firelight, is I think some of these other assets that have had consistently large market caps can be quite useful in this sort of scenario. I think there's a lot of dormant value that people would want to use to on a blockchain with smart contracts and actual DeFi apps put on in place that could actually catalyze a lot of use on a chain like Flare. So I mean, we were talking about Doge. I had mentioned XLM from Stellar or Cardano. These are other options. Litecoin. I mean, I think the Litecoin, I don't know what they call themselves, Litecoiners, but you know, there's pent up demand here. Kind of tangentially, another topic that needs to be addressed is, you know, where are these assets held? So with Bitcoin, there's a lot still held on the blockchain. And so the F assets portal bridging over to the bridging over to Flare can probably see more demand than something like perhaps Doge or Litecoin. So there is a question of, you know, where these assets are coming from. I think there's still demand, but if a lot of these are held on centralized exchanges, having some sort of mechanism to bring those through the exchanges onto Flare probably will unlock a lot of potential. So thinking of Flare as essentially, you know, the blockchain equivalent of Base or Ink, but maybe for multiple centralized exchanges at once, where these users are able to bring those assets on chain via F assets.
Yeah, the more I think about this, it's like there are so many possibilities, and particularly when it comes to FDoge, I don't really know what is going to happen with that because I don't know like who used it, but it could be a very interesting thing, right? To see like the first meme coin that actually gets utility thanks to an interoperable protocol. But anyway, we will see. And thinking about XRP because and Firelight because we want to talk a little bit more about that. A lot of people are excited about it, so for the people in our audience, XRP has never offered native staking, right? So maybe we should go about like what are the basic reasons that explain that, and more importantly, how does Firelight staking or restaking approach gets around this? So maybe this is a question for Gabriel.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the end, I would say like there's a lot of complex dev work going on behind the scenes, but explaining it, I would say, is fairly easy. Is that Firelight's going to be using the the F assets portal that's going to bring over FXRP onto Flare, and then FXRP holders are going to be able to stake their assets into vaults on Firelight, and these vaults are going to lend out not the asset itself, but they're going to provide economic security for different services that are going to build not necessarily on top of Flare. It might be on another blockchain as well, but they're going to have a connector that allows them to tap into the economic value that are in the vaults on Firelight, and essentially use that as an insurance for whatever sort of activities that they're doing. So when we're talking about just like straight insurance, this might be something that is possible where, you know, if you're deploying into a lending protocol somewhere and you want to have that insured, you would be able to tap into the economic security of Firelight or AI agents. You know, we still see that some AI agents can hallucinate or people can break the logic there and pull away the money, as we've seen with the Freza experiment that was on Base, I believe. And so this is a way for these different types of services to add some sort of economic guarantee for the users that want to use these services. And so the easiest equivalents that you can think of, at least in the EVM world, are EigenLayer, Babylon as well to some extent, which is you know, securing other L1s and L2 blockchains via Bitcoin security, and then also to Symbiotic is also another one that people might have heard of. So it's a similar design space, but really focusing on these assets that have this low cost of capital, such as XRP or, you know, potentially Doge, Litecoin, etc.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder about restaking when I think about all of these things. And I think that a lot of people are confused about it. So I think we should ask maybe in 60 seconds if you could give our listeners a sort of plain English definition about restaking. And well, I think you already did, but you know, just to make to be super clear about describing how Firelight's XRP staking model relates or doesn't relate at all to this concept of restaking.
Yeah, so restaking was a term coined by EigenLayer, mainly because their focus at the very beginning was taking staked ETH. So the ETH that is staked to the blockchain to secure the blockchain, and then reusing it to secure other services as well. And that's where the term restaking came from. And it kind of got widely adopted, even though I think EigenLayer wasn't super excited about the naming. It was just an easy way to kind of understand it in the mind space of like what is happening here. So in a sense, it's a very similar concept, but because XRP doesn't have this native staking to secure their blockchain as Ethereum does. It is just simply staking. As of right now, we're often referring to it as restaking with parentheses around the re, because while we're focusing on assets that don't have native staking, there's definitely the possibility that staked assets could also be onboarded. We see this with Symbiotic, where they have both restaking happening with Ethereum, but then they're also taking on other assets like USDE from Athena or other stablecoins that don't have a native staking component. So if anyone has better terms that they want to throw out there, I think we're all ears, because the restaking narrative has kind of run its course, I believe. But that's the main difference there.
Yeah, honestly, I think we're gonna be confused a little bit more, the industry in general, before we arrive to better naming. But surely, I think that that's going to happen. And speaking about, staking and restaking, let's talk about the role of Firelight, right? So essentially, they will introduce staked XRP, and this obviously provide new utility to XRP, and you can utilize it not only as ADS but also for other on-chain actions. For instance, you can think about insurance for on-chain protocols, for real-world events, for option balls, a bunch of things, right? So how do you see the market of XRP and utilizing this asset for restaking? Is this something that you guys see it has huge potential, maybe too much hype? What is like your take on this? And this question goes for both Gabriel and Jeremy.
Yeah, I'll touch on it first. I think I'll continue hitting home on it. Like, the low cost of capital of XRP gives it a huge advantage. And so this is one of the reasons why Firelight was conceived, and the idea that there is a lot of capital out there in the crypto space that hasn't been tapped into, that can still be used in the same way for securing things on an economic standpoint, that other assets like Ethereum or Sol from Solana or Bitcoin can also do. But because there are other use cases that have maybe very high yield bases at baselines, making these assets quite hard to use in a security space like this. Now, again, these might all converge at some point, but at least in kind of like a first mover advantage, not having that high demand, like for example, Sol, if you stake that on Solana, it's already 7% yield. So that means that if anybody wants to stake their Sol to provide economic security, they're going to need to outperform that 7% yield. And so this becomes a very high cost for any services that are wanting to build on top of the staking or restaking protocol. And now partnering that with Flare and its FTSO and FTC components, as Jeremy highlighted, we're able to bring also a lot of off-chain data on-chain. And so this is going to open up a lot of different opportunities that maybe are a little more complex to have happen on something like Ethereum, or you need to have some sort of third-party provider add in some of that information, like Chainlink providing some off-chain data, et cetera. And so I think these different facets coming together are going to allow for the XRP ecosystem to really benefit from the staking components that are produced in Firelight. And it's going to make it quite easy for insurance components, on-chain options, as you mentioned, or things like AI agents. All these things should be able to build on Firelight relatively easily.
Yeah, I'll hop in here too. I want to just kind of echo most of that. I think it's probably underhyped or like around the right level of hype at the moment. But I think the Firelight team's doing a great job at just kind of showcasing what type of use cases you can build with this type of technology. Like even back, I remember like when Flare first launched, there were a couple really, really cracked teams. I think most of them are still building. That were just like trying to innovate with this tech stack. So I think Firelight is going to show that hey, you can build some pretty cool stuff here. So it should hopefully reactivate the community a little bit and get people building.
Yeah, absolutely. What I can say is that the complexity scales, and this makes everything a little bit more challenging. And for me, that makes it really more attractive. And I think that a lot of builders on Flare are drawn to this, right? To challenges and to solve complex problems and provide utility and make things more efficient. So, anyways, we are about to get to the end of this space. It has been a wonderful conversation, but I do have two more questions. So the first one is about restaking 2.0. I've seen people said that this is going to push staking into a new territory, but I want to talk about like risks and reward, right, and opportunity. So in practice, how does it change the kinds of risks staked assets stake on, and what fresh opportunity does it create for builders and token holders?
Yeah, I can start here. So coming back to other restaking platforms, a lot of the focus had initially been on network security. So still an economic security factor, but from a much more technical level. And so this is something that, while in theory is a really cool idea, the thesis just doesn't seem to be playing out, or for various reasons that network security just doesn't have the demands yet, at least, to make all of the TVL that has flooded into EigenLayer and Babylon, for example, really make sense. But the really interesting part of staking or restaking with these, especially with the isolated vault system that Firelight has, is that you can really broaden the horizons of what you're securing. So rather than thinking about technical stuff, network security, you can start to think about things like insurance, as we have mentioned, either on-chain insurance or even potentially kind of reversing the real world asset idea and maybe insuring things off chain. Plus, other things with like AI agents, these types of things where maybe it's not, we're worried about tasks being performed and an operator, which we haven't really talked about, but like basically the operators in the stack that are making sure the data between the services using the economic security from Firelight and Firelight are completing the tasks that have been assigned to them correctly. Maybe it's less about them making sure that the network stays secured, but they are going to be bringing the data needed to ensure different things are correctly evaluated. So in an insurance idea, if you have, for example, an exploit that has happened, you want to make sure that all of the data is there correctly. The exploit has been confirmed as happening, and then there is this economic payout to the people who have paid for the insurance. And essentially what would happen in this scenario is that the vault that is in securing this insurance platform would, slash the vault and redistribute that capital to the people who have paid for the insurance. So on a risk spectrum, if you're looking at it from this way, network security is definitely lower risks. It's much more objective, task-based things that can be seen on chain quite easily and verified and slashed accordingly. Where we're starting to move into stuff like insurance or betting, for example, these start to become more subjective. They need off-chain data sometimes. They need things that can't be programmably verified on chain. and there's a higher risk potential. So you might be getting paid much higher rewards, but the slash component is much higher. So, with an insurance, for example, you could essentially lose all of your capital, as a worst case scenario, I want to say. But this essentially allows the broadening of the risk spectrum, where people can start to seek out higher risk reward profiles, or strategies. And with the vault design that Firelight has, you can isolate those risks. So there can be an insurance vault that's high risk reward. You can still have something that is network security that's lower risk, lower rewards. And people are able to pick and choose how they want to allocate their capital to get the rewards and have the risk profile that they prefer for their strategies.
Yeah, and I expect a bunch of services that are gonna pop up and offer this kind of solution, because really is so much needed. Like, it's very hard that people can actually understand all of the risks that are involved in this kind of protocols, because like I mentioned before, the complexity is scales, right? And the same happens with the risk. So thank you so much, guys, for all the information that you have shared. I've learned a lot, and I do have a final question though. I'm a DevRel, so I need to close this space with a question for the devs. So if there is a developer listening today, from your personal experience and point of view, which sort of low-hanging fruit, dApp or maybe some tool gaps remain wide open on Flare? They can try and think to build.
That's a fun question. I think where my head immediately kind of goes based off Blair's strengths, I think a prediction market would be pretty cool. We saw that kind of in the last election cycle, and it maintained itself and it didn't really die off. So I think there is kind of a need for that. So that'd be pretty cool. And then something I also really like from the broader crypto space is the rise like of the intent-based system. It's like pointed to like how Near does it. So it could be cool to see something like that that then gets integrated with FSS. Obviously, that's what I would say at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've thought about prediction markets. I mean, just the Oracle and data accessibility that Flare has. This is its strength, and so prediction markets. I think not to throw shade anywhere, but some real use case AI agents. So, not even these agents might not even have their own token. It's really just like practical agents that are able to perform actions. Partnering this with intents, which there was a lot of hype around intents a while ago, and it kind of died off. But I think there's a comeback to do a lot of account abstraction in general, and Flare seems to be in a good spot to do that. And so having AI agents that are able to take in some sort of intents from users and act on those will really take off in a way where maybe you just focus on a couple agents. You have a protocol that has a suite of agents that are doing very specific things, rather than like pumping out agents constantly. Not to name names, but like this idea is, I think, much more interesting in the AI agent space than what we have seen so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say on the Flare side that we do have this SDK, the Flare AI Kit, and it's getting quite some traction. We do have some interesting projects playing around with AI, and we need to keep, we need to keep accelerating the adoption and the development of that framework. And we actually have a collaboration with Only Dust. So if you're a developer listening to this, please check out the Flare Devs account, and you will find a link in which you can start contributing and get paid for that. So anyways, guys, it has been very, very interesting for me to learn about all of these topics. Thank you so much for joining. To the people in our audience, our lovely community, thank you for tuning in. Maybe Jeremy and Gabriel, you want to share a sort of call to action about the things that you guys are working or exploring. or, maybe some final words?
Sure, yeah. I think I would just say if you're interested in Messari research, go check out the website, see what else we've written. A lot of good stuff over there. And then personal call to action, try to be more of a creator rather than a consumer at times. I know consuming content's great, but let's get back to creating and building the world around us. But thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, from my side, call to action, I guess, is I'll be at the XRPL side event at ACC, which I think is Monday. So my call to action is, come meet me and we can talk about Flare and Firelight.
Absolutely, Gabriel and Jeremy. Thank you so much. And Gabriel, I think I'll see you at BTC. I will be there, most likely on the multi-chain day, but then I will obviously go and visit some friends at the XRPL event. So see you all later, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and please make sure to follow Flare to stay tuned with news. And if you want some entertaining content around Flare and what's coming, you can always give me a follow. And of course, make sure to follow Jeremy and Messari and Gabriel and Sentora. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Well, guys, there we have it. That was the end of the space. I thought it was pretty good. And maybe not so many nuggets, but it was interesting to listen to nonetheless. So, with that being said, I would like to thank you all so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned for some more videos. Have yourself a great day, and until next time,